in this world, you will never truly be happy. No matter what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you, you will never truly be content. You can have the most amount of money in the world, you can have the biggest house, you can have the most beautiful spouse, you can have everything that you desire, and you'll never be happy. True contentment, true contentness and satisfaction comes in the akhirah alone. It comes when we are in paradise. All of this is about perspective and how you deal with the situation. And that is why it is very important that an individual who goes through trial, he changes his perspective of the trial. It's not a punishment from Allah, it's a means to get closer. It is not a punishment from Allah, it's a calling from Allah that He wants you to come back to Him. Now I want to end off with two more points, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He does not burden a soul more than it can bear. A lot of the times when we go through trials and tribulations, it feels that this trial is so great that there's no one being persecuted more than us at that given moment. But the reality of the situation is that is not the case. There is always someone who is in a worse predicament than you. One simple statistic shows that. Any individual that lives in the West, is automatically in the 5% elite of the world. 5% elite of the world. That means 95% of the people are worse off than you. They live off less than $1 a day. They drink water that is brown. They drink water that is mixed with mud and feces and bacteria and everything else. They make shoes out of water bottles. They make shoes out of water bottles just so that they can walk. So the reality is that there's always someone who's being tried and tested more than you. And this is why I remember one of the last halaqas I attended in Medina was perhaps one of the most beautiful. And if you were to ask me, what we were studying, I can tell you we were studying the Muwatta of Imam Malik. But if you were to ask me what we learned, I can tell you that I only learned one thing from that halaqah, and that's what I want to share with you right now. The statement of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anh. The statement of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anh. Where he said, when we were tested, we were grateful for three things. We used to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala during the time of calamity for three things. Number one, that this trial wasn't in our deen. That this trial wasn't in our deen. Number two, that this trial was not as great as it could have been. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have made this trial much, much worse. You lost one parent, imagine those individuals who had lost both. You lost one loved one, imagine an individual who lost his wife and his children. And this is perhaps one of the, painful experiences I've ever experienced, and it wasn't even my situation. There was a friend, a brother to me who I studied with in the University of Medina. He got married, and this was like his lifelong mission. He was a convert, and it was extremely difficult for him to get married. He would go from house to house, propose to sister. The father would see his skin color and say, sorry, you don't have enough money, or your family isn't good enough. Or they would actually say straight out, I'm sorry, but you're black, and my sister and my daughter isn't. And he would be rejected. The day that he got married was one of the most beautiful experiences for him, because that's what he was striving for, that he was chaste and he protected that chastity, and that's what he wanted. Then imagine the day his wife finally becomes pregnant. His wife becomes pregnant, and they're joyous together now that they're about to give birth to a beautiful baby. 9 months pass by. The sister is taken to the hospital. The brother says to his neighbor, look, take her to the hospital. I need to sort some stuff out in the house, and I'll meet you guys in the hospital. The pregnant sister goes to the hospital, and this brother packs up the stuff that the sister will need in the hospital, and he heads to the hospital. He gets to the hospital. Both his wife and his child have passed away. And you can imagine the pain and agony that he goes through. Now put that in perspective to anything that you may have lost in this world. Imagine the time that, there were 10 pounds in your pocket, you don't know where it went, and it was such a painful experience to you. Put it in perspective with this situation. He didn't know he was about to lose his wife and child. He went to the hospital and they had passed away. This was such a difficult trial, and it wasn't even mine. It was, for a brother of mine. So put things in perspective that the trial can always be greater. And number 3, he says that we were grateful that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed us to be patient in that trial. Allowed us to be patient in that trial. Now, why is patience such an important thing when it comes to trial? Because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that an individual who is patient in times of adversity incurs the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the individual who is not patient, he incurs the wrath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now the situation is already as difficult as it is. You're going through a trial. Why make it worse by not being patient? Because you're only incurring the wrath of Allah. And an individual who's patient and remembers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they get the salawat of Allah, the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon them. They get the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon them. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ends off the verse by saying, وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُهْتَدُونَ, that they are the ones who are truly guided.
Allah, 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 Allah.